We, the member congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association,
covenant to affirm and promote
journeying towards spiritual wholeness
by working to build a diverse,
multicultural, beloved community.
By our actions
that accountably dismantle
racism and other oppressions
in ourselves
and in our institutions.
Many in River Road are already doing important work to support racial justice and multicultural community, and I was pleased that River Road passed the resolution on racial justice. However, I still feel it's important to approve the 8th principle.
I support the adoption of the 8th principle because it would identify RRUUC as a congregation committed to taking actions to address racism, to address systemic racism. I think that it's time to stand up and do this.
Explicitly committing to single out racism in the form of an 8th principle is so vitally important because if one is not anti-racist, then one is complicit in holding up racist systems and racist institutions, as well as racist legacies.
The 8th principle will provide a framework for the congregation to examine whether systemic oppression is creating an obstacle to our open conversations. Like a covenant, the 8th principle will allow us to remind each other that we are working toward a multicultural community.
Confronting the reality of institutional racism and how we can address it in our congregation feels overwhelming to me. Expressing our intentions by affirming the 8th principle is not the same as taking action against racism in our society, but setting that clear intention makes taking action feel more possible.
We must stand up and be counted, not just as UUs, but as members of the entire beloved community moving toward spiritual wholeness.
It's important to have a multicultural community so everyone can get respected and loved.
It will compel us to hold each other accountable, to make sure that racial equity is at the forefront of everything that we do as a congregation. I also hope that it will help us to move from being allies to being abolitionists.
Adopting the 8th principle helps me as a person of color to feel truly heard and seen, not just as a member of our congregation, but as a person whose life story and experiences have been forged by struggles defined by race. I see working together to counter racism as a statement of faith by our congregation, faith in a more inclusive community, and also a commitment to the hard personal and interpersonal work required to bring our values into brighter light.
For me, being part of River Road Congregation is about connecting, learning, and growing. Each of these is done immensely better in a multicultural community.
I support the 8th principle because anti-racism is implied but not clearly stated in the other principles, and because ending racism will help to root out all other forms of intersecting oppressions.
I believe it is important to have a multicultural community because if you only have one culture, you'll only learn one way of doing things. You'll only know your way and you won't know anybody else's.
Nature is inherently multicultural. To achieve ecological balance in the world, no realm is more important than dismantling racism.
I think we need to go beyond our current principles. We need to signal to the wider community and to ourselves that we are committed to speaking out against racism and doing more to welcome and embrace multiculturalism.
In our complicated and flawed world, I believe there is no more important work to do than this.
It's important to me that everyone can have a welcome space to join.
River Road will join other UU congregations and take a big step toward building the beloved community.
I feel like I'm making a difference when I work with other people to counter racism. I feel like like the people I'm working with and I are making like a difference in the world.
Being in a community which holds itself responsible for this transformation will make me feel more included in and allow an even greater commitment to our congregation and denomination.
We don't have time to lose. The communities of which we are a part cannot be whole without action that we take.
It means that we have begun to, as a congregation, move in the direction of building a beloved community. We have to do that together. We have to do that as a congregation. We have to do that as UUs. And we have to think always that it must be done with dignity, and it must be done with love, and it must be done with purpose.